Golf Smarter number 593, published on May 23, 2017, is brought to you by Radio Baseball Cards. Have you checked it out yet? It's the latest podcast from Smarter Podcasts. Now, Radio Baseball Cards are the greatest baseball players of the 20th century, telling stories about their lives in and around the game. This week, Radio Baseball Cards features a young Roger Clemens talking about his first big league game with the Red Sox. Now, not that this means anything, but Roger Clemens shares the same birthday as Barack Obama, Louis Satchmo Armstrong, and me. Radio Baseball Cards is now available in iTunes, the Apple Podcast app, SoundCloud, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Keep perspective. Be humble. Make birdies. The return of Jim Venetos.
This is Golf Smarter. Sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Jim.
Hi, Fred Green. I missed you.
Oh, buddy, I missed you too, except I was afraid to talk to you. Honestly, I was afraid to talk to you.
Oh, why?
Well, because I've not been very diligent about your method of swinging the club, and after a while, I'm like, okay, I like Jim a lot, but he's going to beat me up for this.
Let's not let that get between our relationship. You know, that's. I'm very used. I think any golf instructor is used to a student seeking out different methods, especially in golf, considering how many students struggle with the game. You know, I think everybody's so well intended with seeking out some sort of a resolution so that they can go play to the level that they want. So, you know, I'm totally okay with that. It's very much a lead a horse to water thing. You know, just because I know there's water there doesn't mean you do.
Right. I may not be thirsty.
All right, and you may not be thirsty, and that's okay.
So,
yeah, don't let that get between us. And
so just jump on my back. I'll carry you.
No, I want to carry you. The thing about it is that's just kind of how it is with lots of students, and I would hate to have that occur. You know, you're allowed to go to Harvard or UCLA or wherever you want. That doesn't make me upset at all.
Good.
But if you want to, you know, I take the perspective is if a student wants my attention, then I give them, 200%, and if they don't, that's cool too.
Well, that's why you have such a long list of success with your students, and you have a lot of students.
I do, and it's growing. It's really fun, Fred. Germany and Austria love the Jim Venetos golf swing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
There's a great gentleman over there, Manfred Stoltling, I believe is the proper way to pronounce it, who has golfselect.com, a website where he's been seeking out, he's reviewing golf instruction and trying to rate golf instruction in a way that he can point his audience towards what he feels is proper golf instruction. Mm-hmm. And so he basically is going through it all and sussing it all out for you and saying at the end, I found this Jim Venetos Golf Academy, and I really like the simplicity of it. And so consequently, for the last year and a half, he's been doing webinars monthly with another golf instructor in Germany. And they've been having these really successful seminars where they're teaching the position-based swing, they call it.
The position-based. And you call it stillness.
Well, I mean, I don't classify it as anything. I'm not trying to put a name on it. I think a position-based swing is a great description of it. You know, we're establishing a position that is going to be our impact position, and we're setting that position in the setup. So it's a preset. You can call it stillness. You can call it position-based swing. You can call it using your forward side. These are all, I would think, the same description of what you're doing physically.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, is this guy an instructor, or like me, is he just somebody who has a lot of questions and wants to talk to every teacher possible?
Yeah, a lot like you. Not a professional instructor throughout his life, but he's now been instructing for the past 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And his audience that he's I think he's somewhere around 70 years old, and really has this huge passion for golf, and wants to bring it to Germany and open people's minds up. He says it's a very much a PGA type instruction belief system there, and it's a little tough and tricky to get people to accept a new system. But as time goes, you reach a tipping point. Now, a year into it, he's got a lot bigger audience, and it's starting to spread to Austria.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. When I've done some recent tracking of the Golf Smarter audience, primary audience obviously is the United States, but close, right? Not far behind, we've got Canada, Germany, Australia, UK.
Mm-hmm. I'd say that's pretty much my same demographics too. I was really surprised to see Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah,
I get a lot of attention from there.
Yeah, as do I. During our off season is their summer, so that's when I get most of my emails and numbers from there. Right. Interesting. So, where are you, Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah, I'm in Maine again. I was teaching along the East Coast over the winter, and now I'm settled into Maine to teach for a few months, and then heading back to California at the end of the summer.
So when you say East Coast, are you traveling up and down the coast, all the way down South Carolina and Florida to meet with students?
All the way down. Yep. Yeah, I've had either a few seminars or just private instruction. I go down and meet with a student for a week or so and work with them on his game, and it's just the thing I love is just reaching more people.
Yeah.
And so by being over here, I've just sort of opened up the opportunity for people to get a hold of me and for me to access them. So it's been fun. I make a trip of it, go teach the whole coast and watch a bunch of people hit solid, tight draws, which makes me super happy.
I bet.
And then I'm back up here now for the summer.
Well, so when you say you do seminars, is that groups of people?
At times, yep. Do as many as 7 or 8 people, and then other times it's just private instruction, individual lessons, one-on-one.
I think that is so cool that you're bringing the mountain to Muhammad type of thing, where instead of having people travel to you, you just go to them and spend a week there and teach. That's amazing.
Why not?
That's amazing. Right? Oh, folks, if you're paying attention, call Jim. Yeah. Let's right now, so people can pause and take notes. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
JimVenetosGolfAcademy.com.
Perfect. Golfacademy.com. Jim Venetos. V is in Victor. E-N-E-T is in Tom. O-S. Jim Venetos, GolfAcademy.com. All right, cool.
That's it.
And how's life in Maine? What you doing? You like it. You like
all
it.
I'm doing is focusing on how to take my school and continue to grow it. And I'm starting to teach other instructors now too, so that we could scale out and reach more people. I live and breathe 24/7. I live and breathe this golf school. So what am I doing? I'm doing that.
Are you having fun?
Doing that, and I tell you what. When I hear when they talk about golf instruction on the weekends and in the tournaments, my heart breaks sometimes for all the people that are being misinformed by the information that they're putting out there.
Talk to me.
I did it, Fred. I called out golf. It just breaks my heart, the idea of you have millions of people watching golf tournaments, and you're watching these great players, and they're trying to give these tips. The broadcasters are trying to give tips to the public that are watching. And it would be like watching Jeff Gordon or Dale Earnhardt race and saying, hey, when you're going to go to the grocery store later, maybe you should drive like Jeff Gordon. It's just stuff that's not going to happen. For the general public to try and mimic what the pros are doing, try and implement what the pros are doing, to try and have this idea that they could play any type of similar game to the pros, hitting 300-yard drives and trying to spin the ball and doing stuff like that. It breaks my heart, because I just realized that now you're basically giving a weapon, or the idea of a weapon, to somebody that's not capable of using it. And so now you set the standard wrong. You know, like when you watch Bodie Miller ski, do you think, oh, the next time I go skiing, I'm going to go 75 miles an hour down ice? Or do you look and say, wow, he's great, he's a great talent, and when I go skiing, I'm going to be careful and stay within my lane, stay within my skill set? And so often in golf, they sort of encourage you to, like, as if you're going to go out and hit 340-yard drives like Dustin Johnson, you know? And I think there's a big disconnect right there, and I think that's part of, and I see it all the time with students. Students have improper expectations of who they should be or how good they can play, and the sad part is, you know what's really missed, I think, Fred, is that who you are as a golfer is the sum of a group of skills. So if you can hit a 350-yard drive, that doesn't mean anything. You know, you are a sum of skills. You have to chip, you have to putt, you have to be able to play irons, and you have to be able to drive the ball. Now, if you actually are able to do those four things, maybe you can expand and control your trajectory, control your spin, get into hitting lob shots. But people don't realize that they have to accumulate those skills. You know, a pro isn't a pro because he just was gifted. A pro is a pro because for 15 years, every day, all he did was work on his craft, right, and thus build a group of skills that is now able to go out and shoot under par, play this beautiful golf that you get to see on TV. And here you got the average golfer who's playing once a week and is somehow trying to correlate his game to that, where it doesn't work. Instead, if they just said on the broadcast, hey, listen, everybody, all you need, I know you're watching this beautiful golf right now, and it's amazing, and sure, these guys are shooting under par and hitting one irons out of rough, but you can't do that. Instead, what you should do, general public, is build a sound short game made up of a bump and run and a pitch shot, and then be solid with a 3-foot putt and nothing more. You know, you don't have to get fancy with it. Just make 3-footers. How many people pick up putts without even putting out? Just make 3-footers. And then if you could just have a simple ball striking game that is predictable and something you could rely upon, nothing that is made up of distance. You know, you don't have to try and match your distances to pros because it's not going to happen. And so, you know, I think that is a much better plan to give a student and say, hey, why don't you, it's just like in basketball. You can't walk out on the court if all you can do is dribble. You got to be able to pass. You got to be able to shoot. You got to be able to play defense. And so in golf, you have to do the same. You have to build some skills, and then you got the chance to go out and play the type of game that you want.
Who do we hold responsible? I know I'm loving this. I'm curious, who do we hold responsible for these misguided expectations by amateur golfers? Do we hold the golfers responsible? Do we hold the announcers? Do we hold the sponsors? Do we hold television?
That's a great one. That's such a great one. You know, I as an instructor, I deal with students, and there are good students and there are bad students, and it just means that the good student is a student that's going to follow the curriculum and work together with me to get to our goal. And the bad student, and bad's a wrong word, but just the more difficult student is the one that doesn't follow the curriculum, kind of gets out of line. You know, it's like, it'd be like showing up at Harvard and you're a freshman and you're trying to take senior level classes kind of thing. You just got to follow the curriculum. And if you do, then sure enough, the student gets a great enlightenment that occurs. But I find students are always eager to dunk. You know, if I was going to teach how to play basketball, they say, I want to learn how to dunk first. It's like, no. Dunking isn't even a part of it.
Yeah.
And so it's that flash. And so I say, yeah, sure, the student's part of it. I think part of it is the manufacturers that are constantly enticing you with this idea of saving your game through this technology in this club that's going to fix all your mistakes. That's ridiculous. You know, imagine if you bought a car, and I think they're kind of doing it now, where cars are able to self-govern and keep you from going into the next lane, but still, if it wants to, it's going to go into the next lane. You know, there's a point where you still need to participate in that. And in golf, the manufacturers are just promising that, oh yeah, you'll never slice again. When has that ever worked?
Right.
If that has ever worked, then that club would be the most popular club around. So I think it's a combination of things. I think, you know, I think golfers need a reality check. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that many golfers do daydream and do have these kind of, going back to skiing, right? when you show up at a ski mountain, you don't go to the top of the mountain. Why? If you don't have the skills, why? Because you're scared you might get hurt. But in golf, how many times you see a guy who's a 15 handicap go to the back tees and act like he's going to take on PGA West at 7,500 yards? And it's because he can't get hurt. You know, there's no potential knee injury that's going to happen from skiing at the top of the mountain, because all he's going to do is embarrass himself by playing from there. So I think that just in general, golfers have a big misperception on what their skill level is and who they are as a player. Just because they hit one good 6-iron or they hit one big drive, they think, oh, I could do that all the time, but yet they don't. So a big one for me is I try and teach students, you know, stay within your skill level. If you got to play the red tees or the front tees, play them. There's nothing more fun than shooting even par. And if it means you play it at a course at 6,000 yards instead of 7,200 yards and you shoot even par, that's a really fun day. Oh, yeah. I do it all the time with my students, where from pro students to beginner students, we'll go play the front tees. And you know what? I've shot 10 under par from the front tees, but you know, I've also shot over par from the front tees. And it just shows you it's a small ball and a tough game. And just because you're playing the front tees doesn't mean that you're doing anything that's less than expertise, you know, or less than expert.
I'm such a wuss on this stuff that people kind of raise their eyebrow at me when I say, no, let's just go ahead and play those tees up there. Not the front, but, you know, like, let's be reasonable about this. And they're like, well, that's not golf. It's like, what are you talking about? You going to tell me you're going to shoot par from there? No, you're not.
Right.
So what's the big deal? I want to have the lowest scores I possibly can. Right. So why not make the game a little easier? It's hard enough to play without worrying about your scorecard. So just
and the other thing to remember is, well, you'll probably still worry about your scorecard from up there, but it just becomes easier. And the thing to remember is it becomes within your skill set, you know, and that's the important thing. You know, like when I play a hole, a lot of times because of my power, the trouble is not in play. I could just carry the trouble. So if you could go to the front tees, you get to experience the same luxury where all of a sudden, wow, I can carry that bunker that before I can't even reach. Now I can carry it. I take it out of play. So you get to play a different brand of game. You actually do get to feel a little bit more professional because you're actually hitting wedges into greens,
right,
like I would, instead of being forced to play so far back that you have to hit 4-iron into a green, where, you know, I'm going to make some bogeys with 4-iron. You know, so if you have to hit 4-iron into every green, you should expect to make bogeys on every hole, you know?
Well, that was the
whole idea of being able to...
I'm going to say that was the whole reasoning behind the play it forward thing, is that you should, if you want to play like the pros, then your second shot should be an 8-iron, right?
Right. Oh, I love play it forward, and I think it's cool. You know, I always, you know, as I go to a golf course, obviously I'm not going to feel any insecurity by going to the front tee because I've accomplished so much in golf, and I don't feel like I feel like by going to the front tee, I'm setting a good example for people, and so I'll do that. But I think other people, like you said, it's almost like this embarrassment, and really, that then goes back to the problem, right? Like you mentioned before, what's the issue? Well, I mean, do we have a little too much ego involved with this game, this very difficult game that really your greatest players, their egos have been beaten out of them. You know, there's a lot of humility that is synonymous with expertise. And that's not all of them out there, but there's people have a reverence. Great golfers have a reverence for the game that keeps a respect level up that then causes them to go practice when maybe they're a little concerned. You know, even if they're playing good, they're going to still go practice just to stay on top of things, you know, because the golf gods are always watching. And so
and taking notes.
And taking notes. And I tell you, I think they live at Cypress Point, because when I played it, it sure felt like they were there. But it's really a case of recognizing who you are as a player. And I don't think people realize how much an expert player has insecurity, you know, has fear. And that's what causes him to go prepare like he does. It's what causes him to build his game. It's what causes him to stay within himself and choose the shots that are best suited for his game, you know, instead of playing outside of himself. And the expert, the expert comes off as having all this confidence, but man, it's that fear that builds that confidence because you put in all that practice.
So interesting. So I love that. The great golfers have a reverence for the game, what you said.
Oh, I sure think so.
Yeah. But
too,
ego is still involved, but it's just a different kind of ego.
Sure. It's a more humble ego. You still are confident in your skills and your ability, but the game is so big. The game is so big. And I tell you, I always thought that there'd be somebody else that would come along and beat Tiger. And I think it's really interesting that it's the game that's beaten him, not another player. The game finally caught up, and he got exposed for whatever his skill level is for the past group of years. And sure enough, it's like, wow, the game won, and the game always wins. The game catches all of us at some point. And such a great player like him, for the game to still chase him down and kind of put him in a place where, and that's something that, you and I had talked about through email with Tiger right now. We saw Andre Agassi, who was the number one player in the world and fell out of top ranking and went all the way down to the satellite tours of tennis and was an unranked player. I watched him play at UCLA in the Los Angeles Tennis Open. He got smoked by some college kid, and he walked across and he shook that college kid's hand, and he was very humble and looked like he was determined to go continue to work. And sure enough, he worked his way all the way back to number one. And I think that's an indication where, the game caught up with him, and he then was able to access a lot of skill to get back on top. And I'd like to see Tiger do the same thing. Instead of Tiger taking spots out on PGA Tour events, I like to see Tiger go down to satellite tour events, play some mini tour events, and work his way back up. Because you know what? Those guys playing mini tour events are really good.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with him going down and beating those guys and then developing his skill and getting to the point where he can compete at the highest level. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, what it would do for the popularity of those tours. I mean, if one of those mini tours announced that Tiger's going to be playing, you think they're going to get a couple people to show up, and the press?
Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh.
Sure, it's like Jordan playing baseball,
right?
Except for Tiger's actually good at golf. So, yeah,
well,
I think that would be a great thing.
Is he? Or was he?
Of course he is. He didn't. Well, if you were, then you can be again. That's for sure.
I don't know. That's true. Aging gets in the way.
Oh, come on. This is golf. All right. Here's my next. I'm calling BS in a second place. Come on, Tiger. If you're playing all the time with your buddies and you feel like you're healthy, and trust me, when a pro's playing in his practice time, he's playing 18 to 36 holes, 27 holes. He might play 18 in the morning, go play 9 later. There's a lot of golf going on when a pro is preparing and training to go play competitively. So why would 4 rounds all of a sudden kind of make his back hurt? Mm-hmm. Pat Perez has a radio talk show on golf. Have you heard of it?
No.
You know who Pat Perez is?
Sure.
Yeah, the PGA Tour pro?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he called out Tiger, and he says, oh, come on, Tiger, we know. You are scared to go play poorly, and so that's why you're going to withdraw. And, I don't think that he was out of line for saying that. I think any good player knows when he's not going to play well, and whatever excuse he might use to avoid, especially considering Tiger's under such a microscope with his recovery and his rebuilding of his game, I totally understand why he would say, nah, I'm not going to do this tomorrow. I feel like I'm not going to play well. But the idea of an injury occurring seems a little bit far-fetched, considering he's playing a ton of golf at home anyway. It's not like going to play a 4-round event is like running a marathon. When you prepare for a tournament, you're running the marathon. And then when you go to the tournament, it's more like a sprint. It's really just nothing compared to the preparation you put into the event. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and I think that's another part of that ego thing that we were talking about. Golf really it's a tricky one. You know, it'll make guys give up the game. It'll make guys feel so proud of themselves that they'll brag about, you know, shooting scores. It'll make guys cheat and lie too.
Yep.
It's an interesting little game, and I think that when you can get your ego in check and keep perspective, you know, just keep perspective and be humble, then I think that then becomes a formula towards putting in proper practice time and having a good work ethic. And then, you know, when you start making birdies, you gotta sometimes just act like you're making pars. You can't get too excited either way, because the game is I refer to the game as a fickle lover.
Sure.
You know, and you know how fickle lover can be.
No comment. You know, it's interesting because when my son was a high school wrestler, the coach used to say to them all the time, "Do not celebrate a victory on the mat. Act like you've been there.
Act like you've done it before."
Yeah.
I think that's a big one.
Right. So when you say Tiger was beaten by the game, I'm really curious what that means for you.
Well, you know, the game is hard, and for a long time he had power, he had confidence, and it seems, you know, and there's something magical, I think, in life. I'm a believer in mind, body, and soul. Mm-hmm. So the mind is what you understand scientifically, and the body is the physical entity, and then there's the soul, the spirit, you know, the heart of a champion. I think that the ball starts to bounce your way when you truly believe it's going to. You know, and when your soul is so confident, your spirit is so determined to win, you seem to not get too negatively affected by poor shots. You don't mind if he hits it. Before he'd hit it 3 fairways right, and he'd go find it and then hit it 6 feet. In the last 6 years, he hits it 3 fairways right, and he goes and finds it, and he leaves it in the trees. So you see that there's been an exposure there where he doesn't have the same skill to get himself out of that trouble. And so basically, like I said, the game has been difficult enough to expose him. We've also, you know, courses have changed in the last 10, 15, 20 years. They're constantly preparing PGA Tour courses for the increase in length and all this skill that they have.
Thanks, Tiger.
And sure enough, and Tiger was a big reason, right? He was the reason why they started lengthening everything.
Which is ridiculous.
And isn't it ironic that now he really can't keep up with the length that he inspired? Now, if you ask me, I think it's because he has poor mechanics. He changed his swing. I don't think that, you know, the work that he did in the last, since Butch Harmon, I don't think any of that work has been very good stuff. I think it's all been, I think Butch had a lot to do with his early success with his mechanics and his swing, and since then, I think he's dealing with instructors that aren't necessarily able to help him. So, you know, he's obviously changed his swing. And once you do that, you are playing with a different weapon. And he's not familiar with this weapon.
Well, plus,
like,
there was a perfect storm for Tiger.
Yeah, it might have been. But I don't think that whatever got exposed in his personal life, I don't give that much credo. You know, Kobe got exposed in his personal life, and he put up the most points that year. Yeah. You know, we've seen it before where athletes deal with that kind of exposure and still have enough skill to get by it. I think in this case, it was a perfect storm where his skill was crumbling. He's getting older. He's got some physical injuries, and then all of a sudden he loses the confidence of the masses. Everybody then has a different viewpoint of him personally, you know, so maybe that's the perfect storm. But in reality, when you change your mechanics, see, this is something to pay attention to with golf instructors. There are one-dimensional swings, and then there are multi-dimensional swings. And what I mean by that is there are swings that are taught, let's say, by Sean Foley, that are going to produce one type of golf shot only. So you better be prepared to hit a tight little fade and a tight little fade only if you're going to be working a one-dimensional swing. You can't work the ball. You can't control your trajectory. You can't hit fades and draws. Instead, you have multi-dimensional swings which allow a player to do more. So, like the swing that I teach allows you to hit fades and draws, allows you to control trajectory and adjust spin. So when you take a player like Tiger and you put him in a one-dimensional swing, you're basically taking somebody who's a great fighter and giving him a stick as a weapon. And he's used to having every weapon in the arsenal. So now it gets a little tricky when he's trying to hit all these shots from the more difficult spots on the course. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because he had so many different shots in his bag early in his career.
Yes.
I think that was what's so remarkable about him.
Oh, for sure. That's why he would win by 10 or 12 strokes.
Right.
Because he had that many answers. Instead of just hitting one shot into every hole, he could then work the ball based upon pin positions and wind and the slopes of the green. And that alone is going to set you apart. That's what Jack was able to do too, though. You know, so you see these great players, they're able to have a strong enough skill set to deal with the multi-dimensions that you have to deal with on a course. All the problems that the course poses for you, you have to be able to answer those problems.
Are you upset with Tiger?
No. Why would I be upset with Tiger?
Just not on a personal level, obviously, but I mean, like in a big picture level. Are you upset with the directions that he's taken himself since, let's say, since his father passed?
All right. I'm gonna expose myself right here.
Go for it.
I lost a bet. I bet that Tiger would never win a PGA Tour event. And this is because when I grew up playing, and we're playing junior golf all together, I'm seeing Tiger as a junior golfer, as a high school golfer, and then into college. I really wasn't that impressed. And so when Tiger came out on tour, I bet one of my best friends, I bet him $100 that Tiger wouldn't win a PGA Tour event in the first 2 years.
Oops.
Yeah. And then after his first tournament, I think Tiger didn't play that well in his first tournament, so I doubled the bet. I was certain it would never happen because I'd seen this guy before. I'd seen him. And then, of course, he wins and wins and wins.
And wins and wins
and it was
and
always
wins
a
and
shock
wins
to
and
me.
wins.
It wins and wins. Yeah, but I tell you what, the guy I bet against is the guy we're seeing right now. This is the guy that I grew up playing against. These are the kinds of shots that I would see, and that's why I just thought, I thought there were a lot of other players that were better.
What was the change for him then after you saw him as in high school versus when he just took over the sport?
Oh, I don't know. Obviously, there's I think it's all history now, right? We can all just look it up and see what the change was. And I was obviously wrong in my assessment of him. But I do think it's funny that, right now, this is the guy I was betting against. I thought that's how his whole career would go, to be honest. I was wrong. And I think Butch had a lot to do with him becoming so excellent. Butch is an instructor that talks a lot about trajectory and controlling the spin on the ball. And I think that's really important. I think his other instructors have gotten more into mechanical positioning. And I think when you take a great player, he already understands spin. So Butch was able, I think, to give him that deeper understanding of spin and how to use spin to your advantage.
I think this is so interesting. That your thoughts.
Yeah, I just exposed myself, boy. I thought I'd never say that on any kind of a
public forum,
large public forum. But
yeah, it's not that large. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and it's my mistake. I was wrong, but I just think it's funny now. I tell all my buddies that I played in college with, this is the guy I bet on.
And you paid up. I'm sure you paid your bet. You would.
Oh, of course.
And then, so did you have somebody that you, when you were making that bet, you were saying, no, here's the guy to keep your eye on?
No.
So you weren't impressed with anybody at that point?
No. It wasn't like that. It was more just, it was this wave of Tiger. It was that was the focal point. I was a huge fan of Fred Couples, always have been, and Ernie and all the players of that generation, Elkington and Jack. But the conversation wasn't about me trying to predict the future for the best players. It was just a matter of how well do you think he's going to do, and I was wrong. But
yeah, but that's okay. Now you're right.
Well, I'd like to see him, honestly. I think it would be so great for golf if he went down to the mini tour events and played them. And they're not bad events, you know.
And worked his way back up.
You don't make, you work your way back up. You don't make any money on those events, but that's obviously not an issue for him. So for him to go down there and really get sharp, and I think it would honestly do something for his golf soul, you know, and the persona that kind of has changed a bit amongst many public eyes. I think we'd all appreciate that a lot. I think it'd be a beautiful thing to see somebody be that humble and go down and really work their way back up and be honest, essentially be honest about their skills. Because I think that's one of the things that everybody gets upset about now. Because he says, well, yeah, I expect to win. Then he goes out and misses the cut. And I think we're all getting to the point where it's like, well, you're saying that you expect to win, but you must know otherwise. I mean, we all know, you know when you're going to play good or bad when you go out. You know, you have some feeling, some sense of it where you're like, yeah, today feels like it's going to be just good. You know, and his sense of it is very keen. So he knows when he's going to play bad.
It happens just in baseball all the time, right? A guy gets he's injured in baseball. He doesn't just come right back to the bigs. He goes to the minors for a while to own his skills again.
Of course. Right. And because that's accepted, it's not looked down upon. It's
right.
Like, it's part of it. But in golf or in other, you know, it's that ego thing again. It's like, why should the ego even be a part of it? But such is human nature. Then alas, we are talking about him, you know?
Yeah, well, I love the line you had. I think that's going to be the name of this episode. Keep perspective, period. Be humble, period. Make birdies, period. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's such a humility to good golf. And you watch Jack, you know, if you want to watch an example of how to make birdies and how to be a champion. I mean, when you hear stories from Tom Watson about what Jack would say to Tom Watson when Jack lost, not when Jack won, but when Jack lost, Tom Watson would talk about the things he'd say. And this is many people that have beaten Jack would refer to his graciousness in defeat. And I think that's such a great indication of humility and a great indication of perspective. And I think that's also why he was so dominant for so long, you know, and he never hit a spell like Tiger's hit. You know, Jack was good forever, and then Jack started designing courses, and that was it.
So then you must have, or let me not even put words in your mouth. How did you feel when Sergio won the Masters this year after grinding it out forever?
Okay, I thought that was super cool. And I also thought it was an indication of he kind of fell into it.
Oh, really?
You know, it wasn't a whole lot of well, for example, you know, missing that putt on 18 to win it, that then caused the playoff, right? You know, that was kind of a big moment right there. I think if he wins it right there, it's like, yes, he won it, but instead misses what was an obvious opportunity to win, and then ended up still winning, which is great for him. I think he deserves it for sure. But I think it's the state of the game. You know, I'm always one to look upon the game and say, well, our pros, are they really performing at a super high level right now? And you know, when I see guys struggling to make putts and having some really configured putting grips, you know, what's funny, Fred, you know, with my swing that I teach, some students might say that it looks a little bit different, right? Because I set you closed in that preset position. I set you with your weight on your front foot. But when I watch so many putting grips out on tour, and you know, these claws and these, to me, they're a cry for help. They're obviously somehow the traditional putting grip was not working, and so you've now sought out. You went to cross-handed, left-hand low. You went to a belly putter, then you went to the long putter, and then you went to side saddle. And you just you're looking and looking and looking, and I just see so many tour players have these really weird putting grips, and I think to myself, gosh, you know, people think that my swing looks weird. How about that? That's pretty weird looking right there.
That's an excellent point.
But I'm glad Sergio won, and I think it was beautiful with the whole Seve thing. I love Seve, and I think it's great. You know, it was obviously meant to be, and it was a fun tournament to watch for sure.
Yeah.
But I can't help but just say, like, come on, are our pros really performing as well as they should? I mean, there's a lot of errant drives this year at Augusta. You know, in years past, we've seen some pretty profound ball striking. You know, like when Phil has won, or even when Spieth won. You know, Adam Scott. You see this beautiful Bubba, this great, powerful ball striking. This year seemed to be like we're all waiting for, you know, the other shoe to drop, where it's like, well, when's the choke going to occur? And I just think it's an indication of the state of the game. I think it's an indication that the pros could be better. And of course, I'm gonna throw my methodology into the hat and say I think that would have a lot to do with them being more consistent and just playing at a higher level consistently. How about that?
I know that you're a huge basketball fan. You always have been. You love bringing up Kobe. You love bringing up your Lakers. You want to make any predictions for this year's NBA Finals?
Ooh, I bet it's going to be the Cavs and the Warriors.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be a difficult prediction at this point. But, you know, there's some people that are on the opposite side that I'm not going to necessarily count out. but LeBron
I'm
is
pulling for
poof. You can't say
LeBron's amazing, and I'm pulling for the Warriors.
Good.
You know, I watched you had mentioned that the free throw podcast.
Yeah. Yes.
About shooting onion. I absolutely listened to that, and I enjoyed it. Thank you for that. And
so he's referring to, we were talking on the phone last week, and I was telling him, we were talking about basketball and looking different when you're doing something. I highly recommend, if you haven't found, and I'm talking not to you, but to the listeners now, if you have not found Revisionist History Podcast by Malcolm Gladwell, start. Season 1 was last year. He did 10 episodes. He's going to do 10 more this year in 2017. And one of them is going to be on golf, so I'm going to try to get him on the show. But start with the episode that talks about shooting free throws and why nobody shoots underhand free throws, even though it's proven to work better than you know, with some of the great players of all time who went underhand. It worked well. Talking about Will Chamberlain, right? It's an amazing story. Isn't that a great episode?
That was great.
I love it.
That was great. I love that idea of asking people, you know, why not try something different?
Why not?
You know, how well is what you're doing working right now? Why not try something?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that brings you back to JimVenetosGolfAcademy.com.
Oh, thanks, Fred.
Of course, buddy.
Yeah,
it was
we're
great
open
to talk to you.
24/7.
Yep. And travel the country to see you.
Yeah, and we are turning slices into draws all over the world.
Well, if you're in Middle America, Jim drives through the country to get back to Southern California, you know, in the fall. So get in touch with him if you want to spend some time with him and have him spend time with you to improve your game and give you confidence and make you lose your ego and stop you from throwing clubs. I think you'd probably do well with spend some time with Jim Venetos.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That's what you've been doing, having fun. Jim, it was great to talk to you again, buddy. Thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Fred. I always love talking to you.
Yeah, the feeling is definitely mutual. I really enjoy speaking with him. Now, what Jim didn't talk about this time is that he has a great YouTube channel with more than 100 videos that will give you a better understanding of his position-based swing, or what we've called stillness in previous episodes. Jim has developed a significant and loyal following to his method. So if you've not heard of him before, and you've not started to dig into our archives, which are now open and free to everyone, here's a great opportunity. Please check out these other Golf Smarter episodes where Jim and I go deep into his unique and effective teaching method. I'll include this in the show notes. You don't have to write it down right now. But Jim has been featured on Golf Smarter episodes number 505, 507, 508, 509, 510, 515, and 538. Yeah, I was so enamored with him that we did, 4 weeks in a row with him and didn't repeat any content at all except for what was relevant. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, I urge you to either write a review in iTunes, which we will all get to see, or at Golf Smarter on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. We also have the free Golf Smarter app for iOS or Android, which you can go right through the archives and pick anything you want. Or, of course, just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.